Welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Aaron Dean. Thousands are gathering in Washington, D.C. to mark the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. It's where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. More than 200,000 people gathered to push for the passing of the Civil Rights Act. President Biden and VP Harris have invited the King family and others to the White House to mark the anniversary. President Kennedy famously met with King at the White House on the morning of the march in 1963. President Biden will also speak at a White House reception to commemorate the anniversary. The 1963 March on Washington helped push forward the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and organizations from the original march are reflecting on their work and the future of civil rights in America. The Advocate Channel's Jason Carroll reports.
It was a call for economic and racial equality, a call to action that brought more than 200,000 people to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. on August 28th, 60 years ago, a day best remembered for Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic I Have a Dream speech.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
Among the hundreds of thousands, two young activists who were filled with hope.
I was all the way on the top.
All the way on the top, over
Yeah.
to the left.
Yeah, over to the left.
Cortland Cox is now 82, but 60 years ago, he was a 22-year-old working for the civil rights organization SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
And what I remember is the platform is there in the Met Center.
Edward Flanagan was there too.
Where were you? Do you remember?
I was sitting on the wall up top there by the entertainers.
Flanagan is 80 now, but on the day of the march, he was a 20-year-old who had just finished his shift as a waiter. Like scores of others, he wanted to take a stand for civil rights.
I was very close to Joan Baez. Okay, I was able to notice she was barefoot, and I had on a new pair of shoes.
She was barefoot.
She was barefoot.
A march 6 decades ago, now seen through the eyes of two different men who shared the same goal many did that day.
It was, in fact, a march for jobs and freedom.
Our thoughts today is that we succeeded in changing this country.
As a young organizer, Cox was responsible for arranging safe transportation for people making the trek from the South to Washington, D.C. He says there were challenges from top to bottom. Much had to be done in very little time.
The challenge from the bottom was the logistics of getting people here. Over an 8-week period, I'm trying to get Trailways buses, I'm trying to get Greyhound buses, and the drivers are saying, look, it's dangerous bringing people to the South. The challenge from the top was the Kennedy administration was opposed to John Lewis's speech.
Cox worked alongside then 23-year-old civil rights activist John Lewis, who was the chairman of SNCC. This picture shows the two men as they rewrote the speech to tone it down to make it less critical of the Kennedy administration's civil rights bill, which they felt didn't go far enough to protect people from police brutality.
John Lewis, Jim Foreman, and myself were in the back of the Lincoln Memorial rechanging John Lewis's speech to make sure that while it was critical, was not negative.
That had to have been an incredible moment.
Oh yeah, but what was more incredible to me is that John got up after all of that controversy and delivered a fantastic speech.
It is true that we support the administration's civil rights bill. We support it with great reservation, however.
I've never been here before. I've never been here before. Well, that's very...
This week, Flanagan brought his daughters back to the place history was made. He'll be back again Saturday.
That's the side where the entertainers were.
Cox prefers to stay away this time, saying his marching days are behind him. Both agree while much was accomplished that day, the work is not over.
We are still, while in a much better place than we were in '63, not in the place where one would expect 60 years on.
We succeeded in doing a number of things by what we did in the past, but we also know that we have to do much more for the future.
On Saturday, a rally and a march celebrating the 60th anniversary will take place on the same spot. King's eldest son, Martin Luther King III, will gather with other civil rights leaders to speak and celebrate his father's legacy. Daquan Love, North Carolina's NAACP State Conference Executive Director, says America is at another crossroads on civil rights 60 years later. Thousands are going to be gathered once again in DC for the anniversary. Why is it important to come together once again to continue this conversation about advocacy for our rights and continue to push things forward?
When we have a Supreme Court that continues to turn back the clock on civil rights and human rights, it's important that we continue to petition our government and to make our voices heard. Coming to DC, we will for another year see the beautiful statue of Martin Luther King Jr., who of course was actually not even slated to give the "I Have a Dream" speech on the March on Washington that day. But we will see his statue. We will be able to march around that and proceed to the Lincoln Memorial as we continue our advocacy for what Black America needs today.
There's been a historic rise in Black history erasure in this country. And with the 2024 election right around the corner, can you speak to the power of getting out and standing up against those who seek to tear our community down?
The easiest way to get something passed in this country is to prevent folks from being united and dividing our communities. There are so many issues going on from the African American community, the Hispanic Latino community, poor folks in our country, and the LGBTQ plus community. We all have to stand united because as our civil rights continue to be rolled back, we've got to stand together so that we can advocate for what's just, what's right, and move this country forward. But that's not going to happen if we don't stand up and if we don't advocate and show our leaders in Washington that we matter and our civil rights matter and we are here to stay.
And thank you again for that tidbit about Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. I didn't even know that myself until today. But when it comes to that,
good fact. Actually, Mahalia Jackson, if you go back and watch the black and white footage, Mahalia Jackson keeps saying in the back, right back, because she's seated behind Dr. King, says, "Tell him about your dream. Tell him about your dream." And what she was really referencing was the speech that he had given a few months prior in Detroit, Michigan, at the Freedom Walk that they had in June. And we just celebrated the 60th anniversary of that in Detroit as well. So that's a little tidbit of history there. That was not even a part of his original speech, and that's why it was towards the end of it.
See, you know what? That's why we have you on, because you are a wealth of knowledge. I love it. And when we talk about his "I Have a Dream" speech, it seems to ring true more than ever. Do you believe that? Has it stood the test of time?
Dr. King's dream is the American dream. And what all that Dr. King wanted and stated in that address is we deserve all of the rights, the unalienable rights that our founding fathers of this country desired our country to be. Those freedoms, those essential freedoms, like the freedom of the press, the freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, and of course, obviously, the amendments to the Constitution that even expanded those rights. But right now, we're in a time in which the Supreme Court is trying to roll back those rights. Our local and our state legislatures are trying to roll back those rights. And if we remain silent, if we remain complacent, those civil rights that we celebrate, we will lose in the blink of an eye. So we have to remain vigilant.
Leaders of all kind are optimistic that this upcoming march will, somewhat match the energy of what it once was 60 years ago. What are your goals for going to this march?
It's about commemorating the original March on Washington, commemorating the 2 years of organizing it took to put that event on, and all of the sweat equity that went into this one-day demonstration that ultimately led to additional civil rights being guaranteed for our people. But also, it to me is a symbol of advocacy in the 21st century. It is an opportunity for communities all across this country, not just Black and white, but Hispanics and members of the LGBTQ community and our Muslim Muslim brothers and sisters and our Native American brothers and sisters to come together under the banner of ensuring that we have more civil rights in this country, not less.
Thanks for watching Advocate today. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Aaron Dean.